And Ranking Member Haskins has to hear the loud gavel as well, so just want to make sure everybody's awake. Welcome to House Higher Education Budget Committee meeting for Friday, February 14th, and happy Valentine's Day to all of you. We're going to start discussing bonding request. We're going to make some copies of a proposed amendment on HB 2248, but we're going to get copies right now. So we'll just jump into the University Bonding Authority request. You should have a one-page sheet summary. This is what I gave out to appropriations yesterday, but appropriations, we had no time to discuss it. I was told perhaps this could be considered in a trailer bill or a technical cleanup bill, kind of at the end of session. I'm not really sure exactly how that would work, but we've got University of Kansas refinance of the Central District project to save about 7% with the refinance. Then you've got School of Architecture, Phase 1, $60 million in bonding authority. New student housing, $100 million bonding authority. K-State Ag Innovation Initiative. This is an ongoing project. They're just requesting some additional monies or a little bit more of a ceiling so they can have flexibility in completing their project. And they had mentioned they would try to see if they could continue to raise money in lieu of the bonding. Same with Wichita State University. This is an existing project with the Cessna Stadium, but they're requesting up to $60 million in bonding. So we weren't able to have the Kansas Development Finance Authority come before our committee, unfortunately, this year, but they did provide us a State of Kansas 2024 debt study, and there's a lot of information in there. If you could get that out of your folder, if you can find it, page 9. It's this report. It looks like that. And I guess my view is, you know, I don't necessarily want to micromanage what our universities want to do. You know, first they have to go through the process of getting approval by the Board of Regents to approach the legislature for the bonding authority. Then if we were to approve it, then it would go back through a whole process, not only with the Board of Regents, but the Kansas Development Finance Authority, making sure that, you know, all their ducks are in a row before proceeding with the issuance of bonds. But this, on page 9, there does show a surrounding state comparison. And I found it interesting that Kansas is up to, I guess, higher than our regional surrounding states when it comes to net tax supported debt per capita at $1,354. However, the U.S. mean is more than that. So I believe some of the other states around us, like Missouri, has AAA rating from Moody's. We are AA2, which I guess we're on the right track, but that's an overall rating for the state, not necessarily just the universities. So just wanted to point that out. Didn't know if you guys had any strong opinions on bonding as a tool for our universities or for them to finance certain projects, but I'll just open it up for any discussion that you may have. And the discussion that we have, basically, I want us to figure out what we would recommend back to appropriations on what we think on these bonding requests. So I'll open it up. Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said that you didn't discuss this in appropriations, but have you have you had like private conversations with any of the appropriations members just to get their opinion on it and to see whether they're supportive of this or whether they're supportive of all of it or supportive of just some of it?
I haven't had extensive discussions with people on appropriations necessarily. I have my own feelings about bonding authority and things like that. I guess some of the concerns I were to have is we know there is an enrollment cliff. There's less students going to four-year institutions because there's less students to go around. We have a oversupply of higher education nationwide and less students. Um, and so I worry about, especially housing projects and things like that, the potential to have overcapacity on campus eventually. And then you have a problem. That creates a liability for our institutions as well as potentially taxpayers if they come back to the legislature someday and say, hey, we've had a shortfall, tuition's gone down, enrollment's gone down. We've got this new building that we've financed with bonding and it's eating away. So those are some concerns I have. I know, for instance, K-State University, last year they came to the legislature and they said, hey, 10 years ago when we started this NBAF project, the state had told us that they were going to pay off our debt because they issued bonds for I think it was the BRI, the Biosecurity Research Institute. So they came to the legislature and just said, hey, we had this deal, but I was never saw anything in writing, like it was a signed deal, but it was maybe just an oral agreement or assurance made by a former governor to other people. And so we ended up putting in their budget, I think $2 million more in SGF to pay off their debt service obligations. And that will go into effect for the next 10 years. So those are the types of things that I've had experience with in my short time here. Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we've had a pretty good discussion about the projects that are listed on here. Quite honestly, I think it's appropriate from time to time that all of the institutions can use debt as a way to take care of the projects. I think that there are the means to be able to pay for these projects that are listed. I think I think they're all appropriate projects to be used for debt. Um, my recommendation is that we, do whatever actions necessary from this body to send it to appropriations. So, their consideration.
Representative Wagner.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, just philosophically, I mean, bonding, it's just like getting a mortgage, on some long-term asset, there's a logic to it. My concern, and I just want to make it clear is that, I mean, this is their bonding authority. I mean, they're paying off the note. I mean, they must have this, that this doesn't necessitate any sort of increase in contribution from the state to the university. That I'm assuming this is doesn't necessarily obligate us. They're the ones who are supposed to be doing the due diligence on the project and whether it even makes sense or not. Again, I will say University of Kansas spending $100 million on new student housing when arguably in-person student attendance is going to be dropping seems a little, like a stretch. But again, KU, they have their almost $1 billion budget. I would assume they know what they're doing. And if it doesn't go as they planned, I don't see why they should be coming to us for some sort of bailout on this. Anyway, but again, it's, I'm not against it. I just want to make sure that we really aren't somehow by doing the bonding that we're saying, oh, we're going to jump in and, bail you out if things go bad.
Appreciate the feedback. I think the only obligation that the state would have, or the university via the state, would be for, in the bonding language, it would say, uh, the university would be responsible for the maintenance and repairs of the buildings and things like that. But, a lot of that does come from state resources. So, by increasing your footprint, there are increased costs in some other auxiliary ways of, the utilities or the infrastructure, deferred maintenance, and things like that. So, is there any other discussion about any of these? Yeah, Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the comments about this magical cliff that's out there. But at the same time, and I realize, that there are probably less kids that we're seeing in our school systems throughout the state. But, the other side of the deal is, I know like the University of Kansas, the amount of time and money and effort that they go in recruiting, along with the other universities that we have in this state, they're going to do everything that they can to get these kids to come to our universities, everything that they can. And I don't know. I think that we just need to be putting some faith in our schools that we have and the work that they do in bringing the kids here. I think that's going to happen.
Thank you, Representative. Any other discussion or comments or questions? Concerns? Well, I would entertain a motion just as in terms of a recommendation that we could make to appropriations. So it'd be, I can tell them, yeah, we did discuss it a little bit more and we did make a recommendation. So I think that's part of the vetting process, that we, are assured that these are things that are not only worthy of doing, but we feel the institutions we're confident they can follow through with the financing on this.
Chairman, I would.
Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a motion that we recommend to appropriations granting the authority by the University of Kansas, Kansas State University, and Wichita State University, the authority to bond the projects that outlined to us.
Is there a second? It's been seconded by Vice Chair Sanders. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So I'll take that recommendation to appropriations and hand it off to them, and we'll see if it comes to the floor in terms of some amendment next week on the budget bill, or if they want to do it on a trailer bill later on. So that bought us a little bit of time because Eli does have copies of some stuff for us, but we're going to start off, I believe, with taking final action on HB 2248, establishing the Kansas Nursing Initiative Grant Program, and authorizing the State Board of Regents to approve need-based or competitive grants for the expansion of nursing faculty, laboratory supplies, and tools for student success at post-secondary educational institutions. Representative Amix.
Mr. Chairman, I know that the questions that were asked yesterday, I think everything finally ended up centering around the match that was in the original things that we looked at. I would suggest that we need to have a discussion about whether or not we want to continue that match. It makes sense to me. I mean, it's something that's a pretty popular program, and I think the comments yesterday kind of almost double our money by doing that. So it truly makes sense. So
Thank you for that. I would entertain a motion about HB 2248, then we could have discussion on it and proposed amendments. Vice Chair Sanders?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee votes on HB 2248, it pass it out favorably.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to pass out HB 2248 favorably. Is there discussion? So Representative Amix, back to your point, you had mentioned about the institutional match, and from what I understand, that was through the line of questioning that Representative Wagner had of the conferee yesterday. And it does seem like the Board of Regents had indicated that would be a positive thing they would see. Since then, the Kansas Hospital Association has indicated they too have interest in maintaining an institutional match. And both parties have come up with an amendment for us to consider. So if we could have staff pass that around, and then we can take a look at that. And I would ask also that once it is distributed, if Jill Walters could provide us a overview of the amendment, or you'd be fine there if you'd like.
So I believe in the amendment that has been prepared for you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, we redefined a post-secondary education institution as a post-secondary education with a physical presence in Kansas that offers a course of instruction in nursing and is both nationally accredited and approved by the Kansas Board of Nursing. And I might, I had a question on this, so I just wanted to, there is a slight difference in what this is, and so I just feel it, I should point that out to the committee, and excuse me for not having that. So the only difference would be that it's my understanding that there are from the language differences, there are 4 additional universities that are post-secondary educations that have nursing programs that are approved by the board and nationally accredited, and that would be Rasmussen University, Mid-American College of Health Sciences, Galen College of Nursing, and Allied Health Career Training. So those would be 4 additional who have a presence in Kansas, but would not have met that other definition. So I just want full disclosure that those 4 would be included. They have an accredited nursing program that's approved by the State Board of Nursing. So just that's would be the only real difference in the language there. And then, so they're adding, as you can see there on the box in at line 21, they're adding a match. So you see there on that language on the side, the state board shall require a funding match on a dollar-for-dollar basis in order to be eligible for the grant. And then the board, working with the state, or excuse me, the Kansas Hospital Association, added or revised language about it may be used for the following, but not limited to, because I think they were concerned that that language like required or would only allowed for certain nursing faculty. And so this clearly states that the grants from the program may be used for supplies and equipment. So there's no dollar amount. The old language had a dollar amount. This does not have a dollar amount. And then salaries for instructors in the nursing program, including adjunct clinical instructors, additional funding for additional faculty, or excuse me, funding for additional faculty, professional development for the instructors, and then student support services, test prep, tutoring, study skills, and then funding. They retain the language of funding for student support that would impact a student's ability to attend and complete the program, which said not including, but not limited to childcare services. So that language did remain. And then I would just recommend, and I think the parties had agreed that since we added into the definition of a post-secondary educational institution, that the nursing program be accredited nationally and be approved by the State Board of Nursing. I really think that subsection D is redundant. And so I would suggest that just to have a clean statute and to not have the words repeated and not have a duplication, that we would strike D, and I'm pretty sure the parties have agreed with that, because it is, like we spoke of, it is being included then on page 1 by saying offers a course of instruction in nursing that is both nationally accredited and approved by the Kansas Board of Nursing. So I'd be pleased to stand for questions.
Thank you, Jill. Are there questions from members of the committee? And of course, no one's made this amendment motion yet, but we can discuss it anyways. Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Jill, thanks for the explanation here. The only question I have is in the original bill, it uses the definition of post-secondary educational institution as defined by statute. And then it goes on and adds, that this could also be not-for-profit, which would then bring in the private institutions. By striking that and just adding the means of post-secondary institution, are we no longer using the definition that's in the statute for post-secondary institution? Is that why we can say, private and not-for-profit and for-profit institutions would be eligible for it?
Jill?
So that's why, Mr. Chairman and Representative Haskins, that's why I specifically pointed out those 4 universities that would be different, because the 4 universities mentioned are not post-secondary educational institutions as we define them by statute, who would meet the requirements of the not-for-profit institution of post-secondary with a main campus, that definition that we generally use to describe the not-for-profit independents in Kansas.
So to follow up on that, you had mentioned, I believe, is that the Board of Nursing recognizes and is affiliated or does work with these other institutions?
If I may,
Yeah,
sir,
Jill.
they're approved by the Board of Nursing. So I don't believe it would be correct to say affiliated with, but they certainly have been approved by them.
So under this new definition, Jill, the not-for-profit or the private institutions like Baker and Kansas Wesleyan, they would be included still under this definition, correct?
If they have Mr. Chairman, if they have an accredited nursing program that is approved by the board, yes, sir.
Very good. Is there any other questions? Representative Amix.
Mr. Chairman, so as I see the dollar-for-dollar match amendment that we have, approval of this because of all of the boxes, do we have to have motions on every one of these things? Just the amendments listed.
No, it would just be considered one amendment to the bill. Vice Chair Sanders.
My question would be, what are we going to do with section D? I mean, Jill has recommended that be removed, and it makes sense because it's redundant.
I suppose that could be offered once someone makes a motion on this amendment to strike section D as well.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was curious as to why the $100,000 cap was removed.
Okay. It's a good question. Yeah, I'll entertain if there's so one of the proponents that was here testifying yesterday, if you could elaborate a little bit, share some wisdom with the committee about your perspective on that.
Thank you.
You'd introduce yourself and who you represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Elaine Frisbee with the Board of Regents. We worked with the Hospital Association on adding some language to this bill to make it what we would think of as more evergreen and more flexible for us as an agency to administer the grants. And so this wouldn't mean that 5, 8 years from now, we're coming to you with an edit to the amendment to the language. We could live with this for a longer period of time. Also giving some expansion to or flexibility in the allowable uses so that some new advancement in nursing curriculum that the nursing schools all need to start providing 3 years from now, we don't even know what that might be, would still be an allowable use under the statute. So that was the goal in removing the dollar amount.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Elaine while she is here? Representative Wagoner.
I'm still a little struck. I mean, I would imagine in the original bill, it was there for some, to be kind of a benchmark that, that for non-consumable laboratory supplies and equipment, things would be up to $100,000. I mean, that it would keep it under that amount, that, that, I don't know, for maybe budgetary concerns or something, or, I mean, it does kind of make sense to have some sort of limit, don't you think? I mean, again, I don't know if you've been involved with administering this grant previously or something, that this was something that you butted up against, or if this is a totally new, but I don't know. I mean,
Elaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to assist with that question. Thank you, Representative Wagner. So one aspect of our administration of the grant, this line item that our agency has had since fiscal year 2007 has simply existed in the appropriation bill with a proviso attached to it that tells us how to run the program. And one of the features that we have worked with on the schools, and it hasn't happened very often and maybe on a very limited basis, but when a college of nursing wants to make a larger scale capital outlay purchase, maybe a new simulator or group of simulators, we will allow them to roll over 1 year's grant to another year so that they can add up enough cash to make that outlay. And so by removing this dollar amount, we would still have the ability to do that, and we would be unfettered, if you will, by the statute, and we would be driven by how much funding the legislature gives us each year. So as it is right now, the House Bill 2007 has just under $3.8 million, and so that's really the cap that we're living with in the budget. I hope that makes sense.
it helps.
So the 3.8 would be leveraged with the institutional match. And then can you tell us a little bit about how the program works? So you enter a new fiscal year 26 in July 1. Is it kind of a first come, first serve type of a thing, or how do you evaluate the needs out there?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. I do not serve on the grant review committee. I want to make that clear. So I am not directly party to the process. But we have staff in our workforce development unit who work on this grant, and we have an external review committee who work with our staff, and that includes the Hospital Association, and it includes the State Board of Nursing. And I can find out who else is involved in that process as well, if you'd like to know. But those folks review the grants, and we push out on our website the RFP each year for the schools of nursing. And those additional schools of nursing that were noted earlier by Revisor Walters, I don't believe we have ever provided any grant funding for those schools, but they are on our notice list so that we want to make sure everyone is aware of the opportunity for the grant, because the whole purpose of the grant is to get students through nursing programs to graduate and pass their NCLEX licensure exam. So there is a review process, and it's a competitive process. And for those institutions that maybe their test scores for their program graduates, they're lagging and they're not doing as well, we've devoted and set aside some funds to do more student support service. So that student support feature of the bill was not in the original language back in 07, 06. That was added only more recently as we sorted out and talked to the schools, and they expressed the concerns that students need a little bit more support. So this has been a bit of a collaboration with different industries and with the schools themselves.
Thank you for that, Elaine. I appreciate it. If there's no further discussion, Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that this is so much of a question and just my opinion, but you know, all the language that's being struck out on starting on line 21 through 35, and then the next page, it seems like that's sort of defeating one of the main points of the bill, because I had thought that part of this bill was sort of to make the already existing grant program more flexible, and then also sort of to spell out, you know, different things that it should be used for, that it could be used for. I'm not against the aspect of the amendment that requires the match, but I feel like the amendment's going too far and sort of rewriting the whole bill and striking out too much language, and so I think I'll be opposing the amendment.
I was going to ask if there was any motion to offer the amendment, and then we can kind of go from there.
Mr. Chair, I move that the committee report out favorably the amendment printed before us with section D deleted. So the language in the amendment that we have in front of us with section D deleted.
Is there a second to amend HB 2248 with the proposed amendment, including striking section D? Is there a second? Ranking Member Amix seconds it. We can have discussion, additional discussion on the amendment. Is there any discussion? Representative Wagner? You look like you had.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I will say, you know, it does seem this amendment is a bit more of a rewrite. If we were just trying to get rid of the funding match, it would just be lines 23 and 24 that in the end would need to be stricken. You know, I mean, I think the other representative had a point on that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I like the fact that this expanded amendment, I take it these smaller schools could probably, it would be maybe to their advantage to be a part or to be potentially a part of this. But I don't know. I'm a little bit torn as to whether all of the additional, I mean, again, where it was just a amendment to scratch the funding match, it seems like it went a whole lot further than that. You know, but I don't know. You know, so I'm a little bit torn, I guess is what I would say.
I think the amendment, the way I read it, it seems to create more flexibility for the institutions to work with KBOR to meet their specific needs as it relates to nursing and kind of those wraparound services that you might need to help get someone through a nursing program. So I feel like it gives them kind of maximum flexibility, just the way the bill would be amended. Is there other discussion? Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious, how many schools does this impact again?
I don't have a total number I could ask, see if KBOR had a number that's more accurate than mine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got 7 public universities. So Kansas State University is our one public university that does not have a nursing. So 7 universities. We have, I'm trying to think of our 2-year schools. We have 26 2-year institutions that either have or are on the verge of having associate or certificate programs. And we have, what I don't know is of the Independent College Association, how many of them have nursing? I believe it might be 8 to 10, plus the other institutions that Revisor Walters referenced.
Okay, so a pretty good number. A lot of people in the nursing space in Kansas and a lot of people trying to help the workforce. I think Representative Sawyer, you had mentioned you thought maybe it was 11. Is that?
I'm looking at the testimony from Matt Lindsay, and his testimony said there was 11 of the private that issue degrees in nursing.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you have any follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I guess my point was trying to figure out 3.8 million with the $100,000 cap, and that I think that would make sense as to why the $100,000 cap was there, to ensure that everybody got an equal amount. So thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the proposed amendment? Representative Wagoner.
I would probably need to talk to the regent lady here, but I mean, was the original bill that so if there's 37 colleges or 37 potential ones and it's $100,000 listed here, did that mean all they could receive was 100,000? So basically every school had a shot at getting 100,000? Was that the reason for the $100,000 limitation?
Elaine?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm not sure. I do believe the intent behind adding a dollar amount there. Now that, just to be clear, that is only for that one approved resource, which is for equipment and non-consumables. So the institutions would be eligible then for other amounts. And so when we are awarding funds to each college, not everybody gets the same amount. There is a competitive grant application that they go through, and our review process then reviews how the schools are doing and their performance, and then decides where they want to devote those monies. So I also think perhaps the dollar amount came about as a way of thinking about, I think there was a reference yesterday to multi-year commitments, and not realizing that we already give the institutions that flexibility to allow rollover of our state grants if there is a desire for that.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, trying to remember who made the, Vice Chair Sanders, you may close on your motion.
Mr. Chairman, I close and move my amendment.
Okay, Vice Chair Sanders closes and moves his amendment to amend HB 2248 with the proposed amendment before you, including the striking of Section D. All in favor of the amendment signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Now we're back on the bill. Is there any other amendments or proposed changes to HB 2248? I know there were some concerns, Representative Fairchild and Potter, you had mentioned about the $100,000 cap. Certainly, you know, we could entertain a conceptual. I'm trying to see if there's any reporting requirement. I'm sure that's readily available from the Board of Regents, but I mean, we could always ask that they report back to the legislature in some manner once they get through their first year of the new program or the change program. So there's some of that accountability maybe that you're looking for. So I'll go to Jill because she, I think, has something that maybe would be beneficial on that same topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I was just going to point out that each institution that gets a grant would be required to make periodic and special reports of financial and statistical information to the state board. And so then that would be a public information that then you could ask for if you so requested.
Thank you for that, Jill. Is there any other considerations on HB 2248?
Chairman, I would make a motion if I could.
I believe there is a motion already, but
Not on the bill.
oh, yeah. Would you like to renew your motion, Representative Amix, as amended?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Make a motion that we report out HB 2248 as amended favorably.
It's been moved and seconded to report out favorably HB 2248, favorably for passage as amended. All in favor, or is there any further discussion? I guess there wouldn't be. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, thank you, committee, and thank you for staying with me. It's been a long week, and I'm sure many of you feel the same way. Next, we'll consider HB 2195, establishing the Kansas Tech College Grant or Operating Grant Fund administered by the Kansas Board of Regents. Is there Vice Chair Sanders?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when we pass out favorably HB 2195.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to report favorably HB 2195, favorably for passage. Is there any discussion? Representative Wagoner.
Again, I think this was discussed yesterday, but setting up this technical college operating grant fund, this doesn't specify the amount of money that goes into it. It's just simply that there's a fund with a name that is for these folks.
That is correct. So it would provide them with a line item in the budget bill statute, if I said that correctly. So with no dollar amount. So that would be subject to appropriations. Vice Chair Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I recollect, they're getting 10.5 million, which works out to 1.5 per school currently, and that would be their expectation, but not necessarily what we would approve.
So that is correct. Under the fiscal year 25, that is the appropriation amount. For fiscal year 26, as it is contained in HB 2007, it's down to 7 million. But this would allow us to, it would allow the tech colleges to, I suppose, not be forgotten in the words of the testimony that was provided to us, as there's a lot of considerations in higher education. And so perhaps it wouldn't be necessarily considered an enhancement every year. It would be something in the budget bill that I would presume gives them more legitimacy. I can't talk right now. Legitimacy in year to year, because legislatures change, people change, and so if they have that in the budget bill, it will allow a little bit more continuity in the future. Is there any other discussion on HB 2195? Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Initially, I had some concerns about both of these bills that we're doing today, just because it looked like it was creating two new programs, and with our budget situation, I don't want to go too far in creating new government programs and spending more. But then, when I learned more about both of these bills, it, now seems like we're not really creating any new programs. You know, the nursing program already existed, and we were just changing some things about that. And then with this one, we're really not increasing any spending, or really not creating a new program, but we're just putting it in statute and basically making it to where it's not technically an enhancement. So this just seems like more of a technical bill than anything else now that I've kind of learned more about it, and so I don't see any problem with it.
Thank you, Representative. We'll go to Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my only concern would be that moving forward, that there isn't a dollar amount tied to it, and that would create a situation where they could potentially become forgotten. So not necessarily to amend it today, but to consider that going forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I had a question for Jill, if kind of along that line. Just say hypothetically, we decided today we wanted to amend the bill and we wanted to add a dollar amount. Then you have another budget bill that has a dollar amount in it currently. How do you reconcile the two? I mean, it's one, in the budget bill, there's not this line item because it's not in statute yet. But if we were to get this passed and it did have extra money in it, how would you as a reviser reconcile that? Would it be two pots of money?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, what would generally happen, I mean, think of the university engineering money, and that is transferred over into the university's engineering accounts, the big three. And then those generally are, I believe they get 3.5 million a year is transferred in the law. And then in the budget bill, you go ahead and look at that, the appropriators do. You look at that and you say, oh, that we're gonna allow them to spend all 3.5 million. Or you could say a no limit, you're gonna let them spend, if they would have carryover in there, you're letting them spend everything they have in it. Or you could say, well, for this year, even though we're transferring 3.5 million in, we only want them to spend 1 million a year. And so you would be able to do that. But it's really reflected in the appropriation process that we would know that, I mean, just for example, just say if we had a transfer in here and you put it in here to get 5 million a year in there, then through the appropriation process, we would note that the bill that became law has a transfer in it. And then as appropriators, every year you look at it and say, what amount do you want them to be able to expend out of that account?
Thank you, Jill. Any other questions or comments? All right. Vice Chair Sanders or Representative Amix, did you have a question? Oh. It's been one of those days. Vice Chair Sanders.
I close on my motion.
Okay. Vice Chair closes on his motion to report out favorably for passage HB 2195. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The only thing I have yet today is to let you know if you have any interest in carrying a bill, one of these two bills that we considered today, please let me know, because I'm not sure I'm going to volunteer myself, considering the lack of sleep I get. So I spend about 16 and a half hours commuting in a 5-day week. So that's why I look the way I do. But I appreciate your guys' patience and you guys keeping me on track. And I feel like I have a great committee. Y'all add a lot of value to the legislature, and I would encourage you to keep representing your districts and speaking up for what you believe in. And that being said, I hope you have a great weekend and safe travels home. So no meeting Monday. We're not going to meet Monday. So the meeting is adjourned.